Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Coal Miner's Daughter in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, West Film Friends. In today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called Coal Miner's Daughter. I'm also going to give you all the information on which platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. This video is produced by West Film. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie. In today's video, I'm going to tell you apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storyline, star-cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will give you a small review of the story of this film. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. Coal Miner's Daughter. Daughter is a 1980 American biographical musical film directed by Michael Apted and written by Tom Rickman. It follows the story of country music singer Loretta Lynn from her early teen years in a poor family and getting married at 15 to her rise as one of the most influential country musicians. Based on Lynn's 1976 biography of the same name by George Vexey, the film stars Sissy Spacek as Lynn. Tommy Lee Jones, Beverly D'Angelo, and Levon Helm are featured in supporting roles. Ernest Tubb, Roy Acuff, and Minnie Pearl make cameo appearances as themselves. A film on Lynn's life was intended to be made since the release of the biography. Production for the film began in March 1979, and Lynn herself chose Spacek to portray her on screen after seeing a photograph of her, despite being unfamiliar with her films. The film's soundtrack featured all of Lynn's hit singles, which were all sung by Spacek, as well as Patsy Cline's Sweet Dreams, sung by D'Angelo, and Cline's Back in Baby's Arms, sung by Spacek and D'Angelo in a duet. The soundtrack reached the top 40 on the Billboard 200 chart and was certified gold by the Recording Industry Association of America. Universal Pictures released Coal Miner's Daughter theatrically on March 7, 1980. The critical consensus on Rotten Tomatoes calls it a solidly affecting story. The film grossed $67.18 million in North America against a budget of $15 million, becoming the seventh highest-grossing film of 1980. The film received 7 nominations at the 53rd Academy Awards, including for Best Picture, with Spacek winning Best Actress. At the 38th Golden Globe Awards, it garnered 4 nominations and won 2. Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy, and Best Actress for Spacek. The film is considered culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress and was selected to be preserved in the United States National Film Registry in 2019. Plot: in 1945, 13-year-old Loretta Webb is one of 8 children of Ted Webb, a Van Leer coal miner raising a family with his wife in the midst of grinding poverty in Butcher Hollow, Kentucky, pronounced by locals as Butcher Holler. In 1948, at the age of 15, Loretta marries 22-year-old Oliver Mooney, a.k.a. Doo, short for Doolittle, Lynn, becoming a mother of 4 by the time she is 19. The family moves to northern Washington state, where Doo works in the forest industry and Loretta sings occasionally at local honky-tonks on weekends. After some time, Loretta makes an occasional appearance on local radio. By the time Loretta turns 25, Norm Burley, the owner of Zero Records, a small Canadian record label, hears Loretta sing during one of her early radio appearances. Burley gives the couple the money needed to travel to Los Angeles to cut a demo tape from which her first single, I'm a Honky Tonk Girl, is made. After returning home from the sessions, Doo suggests he and Loretta go on a promotional tour to push the record. Doo shoots his own publicity photo for Loretta and spends many late nights writing letters to show promoters and to radio disc jockeys all over the South. After Loretta receives an emergency phone call from her mother telling her that her father had died, she and Doo hit the road with records, photos, and their children. The two embark on an extensive promotional tour of radio stations across the South. En route, and unbeknownst to the couple, Loretta's first single, I'm a Honky Tonk Girl, hits the charts based on radio and jukebox plays and earns her a spot on the Grand Ole Opry. In the summer of 1961, after 17 straight weekly performances on the Opry, she is invited to sing at Ernest Tubb Record Shop's Midnight Jamboree after her performance that night. Country superstar Patsy Cline, one of Loretta's idols, who had recently been hospitalized from a near-fatal car wreck, inspires Loretta to dedicate Patsy's newest hit, I Fall to Pieces, to the singer herself as a musical get-well card. Cline listens to the broadcast that night from her hospital room and sends her husband Charlie Dick to Ernest Tubb Record Shop to fetch Loretta so the two can meet. A close friendship with Cline follows, which is abruptly ended by Cline's death in a plane crash on March 5, 1963. The next few years are a whirlwind. The stress of extensive touring, keeping up her image, overwork, and trying to keep her marriage and family together cause Loretta a nervous breakdown, which she suffers on stage at the beginning of a concert. After a year off at her ranch in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, Loretta goes back on the road, returning to establish herself as the first lady of country music. The film closes with Loretta recounting the story of her life through her 1970 hit song, Coal Miner's Daughter, to a sold-out audience. Cast: Sissy Spacek as Loretta Lynn, Tommy Lee Jones as Doolittle Lynn, Beverly D'Angelo as Patsy Cline, Levon Helm as Ted Webb, William Sanderson as Lee Dollarhide, Phyllis Boyens as Clara Ramey Webb, Loretta's mother, Bob Hanna as Charlie Dick, Grant Turner as Grand Ole Opry announcer, uncredited, Ernest Tubb as himself, Roy Acuff as himself, Minnie Pearl as herself, Bob Elkins as Bobby Day. Production: Lynn chose Spacek to portray her, making the decision based on a photograph of the actress, despite being unfamiliar with her films, a story Spacek recounts in a DVD audio commentary for the collector's edition of the film. Initially, Spacek was reluctant to participate and asked to do her own singing in the film in hopes of scaring the studio from pursuing her for the role. At the time that Lynn prematurely announced on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson that Sissy Spacek is going to play me, the actress was torn between friends who advised her to do Lynn's film and those who advised her to choose instead a Nicholas Roeg project due to start filming at the same time. Talking it over with her mother-in-law that evening, Spacek was advised to pray for a sign, which she did. She and her husband subsequently went for a drive in his mother's car, where the radio was tuned to a classical music station that changed formats at sunset every evening. As the couple pulled out of the parking garage, the title line of the song, Coal Miner's Daughter, came from the radio. In her 2012 memoir, My Extraordinary Ordinary Life, Sissy Spacek states that she became fast friends with Loretta Lynn and worked to emulate her unique accent and speech patterns by spending an afternoon tape recording the singer while she told stories of her life, some of which made it into the script. She then listened to the tapes and repeated the lines until she captured her own version of Lynn. Though Spacek had started out as a singer, the producers considered dubbing Loretta's vocals over her performance. Lynn encouraged them to allow Spacek to do all of her own singing in the film and help the actress learn to sing and play guitar in her style. The film's soundtrack featured Spacek singing all of Lynn's hits sung in the movie, including Coal Miner's Daughter. The locations included Blackie, Eolia, Flat Gap, Bottom Fork, Red Fox in Knott and Letcher counties in Kentucky, and Pardee, a former coal camp on the Virginia side of Black Mountain. Interiors of Lynn's childhood home were shot in a warehouse in Norton, Virginia. Scenes were also shot in Loretta Lynn's Madison, Tennessee home on Barbara Drive. The replica of Lynn's home in Butcher Hollow, built at Bottom Fork, Letcher County, Kentucky, was burned by arsonists. It was on the front porch of that house that Levon Helm, drummer and singer of the rock group The Band, made his acting debut as Lynn's father. In an interview with Merv Griffin, broadcast on November 7, 1978, Loretta Lynn said that Harrison Ford had been originally cast. Historical inaccuracies. The film emphasizes Lynn's self-fabricated myth that she got married at the age of 13. The myth went uncontested until May 2012, when the Associated Press unearthed her Kentucky birth certificate, revealing that Lynn was actually almost 16 at the time of her marriage and had been peddling a lie for decades. When contacted by the AP before the expose went to publication, Lynn's spokeswoman declined comment. 8. The discrepancy is significant as it alters the narrative Lynn spun in books and other public forums. In reality, it would have been illegal for a girl under the age of 15 to marry in Kentucky. There are other events depicted in the film that are contrary to actual facts. Patsy Cline never owned a tour bus, although she had thought about purchasing one shortly before her death. Cline's plane crash did not occur early in the morning, as the DJ on the radio in Lynn's bedroom stated. It happened shortly after 6 in the evening. "You Ain't Woman Enough to Take My Man" was not inspired by one of Mooney's cheating episodes, which was caught by Lynn while touring with Cline, as the film suggests. The inspiration came from a fan of Lynn, whom she met backstage. The fan told Lynn how another woman had been trying to steal her husband from her, to which Lynn replied, "Why she ain't woman enough to take your man," instantly giving Lynn an idea for a song title. Also, the film portrayed Lynn singing the song to Cline while writing it. The song was not recorded until late 1965, nearly 3 years after Cline's death, so it was likely that Lynn didn't write the song and met the fan who inspired it until after Cline's death as well. In the film, just before Cline's death, Lynn tells her she is pregnant with twins. Given this is the last time they see each other, this would have happened February to March 1963. Lynn's twin daughters were in fact born August 6, 1964, roughly 17 months after Cline's death. Soundtrack Coal Miner's Daughter, original motion picture soundtrack, was released on March 7, 1980 under the MCA Nashville label. It included music by Beverly, D'Angelo, Levon Helm, and Sissy Spacek, except for the end credits medley, and material by other artists that were not under contract to MCA. The album was certified gold by the RIAA on January 11, 1982, and has been released on vinyl, cassette tape, and CD. Levon Helm's Blue Moon of Kentucky was released as a single on 7-inch vinyl, both as a double A-side and also with Alan Toussaint's Working in the Coal Mine, a non-album track also sung by Helm, on the B-side. The soundtrack would win Country Music Association Award for Album of the Year in 1980, the first of only 2 soundtracks to do so. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou would be the other in 2001. Reception. Box office. In its opening weekend in the United States and Canada, Coal Miner's Daughter was number 1 at the box office, grossing $3.6 million in 796 theaters. The film grossed a total of $67.1 million in the United States and Canada, becoming the 7th highest grossing film of 1980 in North America. Critical response. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, Coal Miner's Daughter holds an approval rating of 84% based on 63 reviews, with an average rating of 7.9/10. The website's critical consensus reads, "Like a classic traditional country song, Coal Miner's Daughter draws on time-tested formula and undeniable talent to tell a solidly affecting story." On Metacritic, which assigns a rating to reviews, the film has a weighted average score of 87 out of 100 based on 47 critics, indicating universal acclaim. Variety called it a thoughtful, endearing film charting the life of singer Loretta Lynn from the depths of poverty in rural Kentucky to her eventual rise to the title of Queen of Country Music. Roger Ebert from the Chicago Times stated that the film has been made with great taste and style. It's more intelligent and observant than movie biographies of singing stars used to be. Awards and nominations. Home media. This film was released on Laserdisc on 2 separate releases. The first release was in May 1980, and the extended play version was released in July 1981. These releases were both made by MCA Discovision. The film was released in the VHS format in the 1980s by MCA Home Video and on March 1, 1992 by MCA Universal Home Video. On September 13, 2005, Universal released a 25th anniversary edition on DVD in widescreen 1.85:1 format and featuring the music tracks remixed to 5.1 Dolby Digital Stereo, leaving the dialogue and effects tracks as they were on the original mono soundtrack from 1980. That same DVD was included in a 4-pack DVD set that also included Smokey and the Bandit, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, and Fried Green Tomatoes. On January 7, 2014, Universal Pictures released the film on Blu-ray. Broadway adaptation. On May 10, 2012, at the Grand Ole Opry, Lynn announced that Zooey Deschanel was to portray her in a Broadway musical adaptation. One episode of The Simpsons, titled Colonel Homer, is based partly on this film. The episode also stars Beverly D'Angelo as cocktail waitress Lurleen Lumpkin. In terms of content, if not style, Coal Miner's Daughter would fit with the spate of musician-related biopics that have dotted the recent landscape. And although central figure Loretta Lynn, Sissy Spacek, never had the same kind of Billboard Top 100 success as Elvis, Elton John, or Whitney Houston, to name a few, she dominated the country charts for more than a decade. Made under the auspices of British filmmaker Michael Apted, the movie adopts a low-key dramatic tone rather than the flashy, kitschy one favored by Rocketman Elvis and I Want to Dance with Somebody. Considering that Apted's legacy is tied to the long-running documentary project, the Up series, this is unsurprising. Although the director occasionally ventured into high-profile territory, he made the 007 entry, The World Is Not Enough, as well as Gorillas in the Mist and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. He was most comfortable with scripts that focused on characters. Although Lynn's career was noteworthy, her volatile marriage to Doolittle Lynn, Tommy Lee Jones, provides the film's meat and potatoes. Theirs was an extraordinary love story, peppered with instances of infidelity and mutual abuse. Coal Miner's Daughter sugarcoats nothing, proffering a warts-and-all behind-the-scenes look at a union that was romanticized by the media. Although Coal Miner's Daughter covers only the early years of their time together, roughly the mid-1940s until 1970, they were married for nearly 50 years until his death in 1996. At the time Sissy Spacek made Coal Miner's Daughter, she was 30 years old. That matched Lynn's age during the bulk of the film, the 1960s, but requires a suspension of disbelief in the early scenes when Lynn is in her teens. Apted called his decision not to cast a younger actress for these sequences an artistic choice. Certainly, Spacek's performance never wavers, and once one accepts that the character is intended to be a lot younger than she looks, it's not a distraction. Her performance, the one standout aspect of an otherwise good but not great motion picture, was honored with an Oscar. The actress did all her own singing and is a respectable facsimile. Originally, it was intended to have Lynn overdub Spacek's singing, but after hearing the actress' rendition of the songs, Apted opted against it. Although Lynn was involved in the production, she is never heard on the soundtrack. For Tommy Lee Jones, this was something of a breakthrough role. Prior to Coal Miner's Daughter, his highest profile part had been in the box office bomb, The Betsy. His portrayal of Doolittle Lynn got him noticed. He would go on to appear in The Executioner's Song and Lonesome Dove before making a jump to the A-list with The Fugitive. Although most of Coal Miner's Daughter focuses on the interactions between Spacek and Jones, solid supporting turns are provided by Beverly D'Angelo as Patsy Cline and Levon Helm as Loretta's coal mining father, Ted. Coal Miner's Daughter uses a linear storyline based primarily on Lynn's 1976 autobiography of the same name. It starts in 1945 as 13-year-old Loretta, one of 8 children in the Webb family, first sets eyes on the handsome, brash 20-year-old Doolittle Lynn. Within 2 years, the pair have married. To gain the approval of Loretta's father, Ted, Doolittle makes 2 promises. 1, never to strike Loretta, and 2, never to take her away from Butcher Hollow, Kentucky. He ultimately breaks both. By the time Loretta is 19, she has 4 children. Unable to endure the brutal conditions of the coal mine, Doolittle transplants his family to Washington State. While there, Loretta begins local weekend singing engagements with Doolittle's full encouragement. This leads to cutting a record, the first single of which is I'm a Honky Tonk Girl. Doolittle and Loretta go on a promotional tour of local radio stations, pushing for DJs to play the tune. As a result of this, I'm a Honky Tonk Girl hits the country charts, earning Loretta a chance to appear on the Grande Ole Opry, enjoy further success, and befriend one of her idols, Patsy Cline. Around the same time, her father dies back in Kentucky. Although Lynn's story is ripe for opportunities to ramp up the melodrama, as in a country ballad, Apted resists, preferring to keep things even keel. Emotional reactions percolate gradually through this approach. The mutual domestic violence isn't overdone. Typically occurring when Doolittle is drunk, it's not depicted in a sensationalistic fashion and doesn't present Loretta as a punching bag. On at least one occasion, Doolittle comes out of one of these spats in a far worse condition than his wife. Appreciating Lynn's music isn't a prerequisite for enjoying Coal Miner's Daughter. The characters are well delineated, and the story is sufficiently engaging for the motion picture to stand on its own merits, irrespective of a viewer's affinity for the main character's song catalog. It goes without saying, however, that those with a warm spot for country music, and Lynn's work in particular, will get more out of the film. It could be argued that Coal Miner's Daughter developed a template for the modern musical biopic, one that has gotten extensive use in the last half-dozen years with an increasing number of entries into the genre. The simplicity and lack of excess sets Coal Miner's Daughter apart and gives it a stronger dramatic backbone than many of the movies to follow it. What improbable lives so many Americans lead, compared to the more orderly and predictable careers of the Swedes, say, or the French. It's not just that we're the most upwardly mobile society in history, we're the most mobile, period. We go to ruin as swiftly and dramatically as we hit the jackpot. No wonder one of our favorite myths involves a rags-to-riches story in which success then destroys the hero. Look at country music star Loretta Lynn. If we can believe Coal Miner's Daughter, and I gather that by and large we can, here's a life which began in the poverty of the coal fields of Kentucky and led almost overnight to show business stardom. And what's astonishing is that it wasn't even really planned that way. Loretta learned to play on a pawnshop guitar, her husband thought she could sing, and one day she just sort of found herself on stage. The movie's about Loretta Lynn's childhood, her very early marriage, her quick 4 kids, her husband's move to Washington State looking for a job, her humble start in show business, her apparently quick rise to stardom, and then the usual catch-22 of self-destructivance. We're not surprised, somehow, that right after the scenes where she becomes a superstar, there are scenes where she starts using pills, getting headaches, and complaining that everybody's on her case all the time. We fiercely want to believe in success in this country, but for some reason, we also want to believe that it takes a terrible human toll. Sometimes it does, and that always makes for a better story. Straightforward success sagas, in which the heroes just keep on getting richer, are boring. We want our heroes to suffer. We like to identify it makes stars more human somehow if they get screwed by Valium too. What's refreshing about Coal Miner's Daughter is that it takes the basic material, rags to riches, overnight success, the on-stage breakdown, and of course the big comeback, and relates them in wonderfully human terms. It's fresh and immediate. That is due most of all to the performance by Sissy Spacek as Loretta Lynn. With the same sort of magical chemistry she's shown before when she played the high school kid in Carrie, Spacek at 29 has the ability to appear to be almost any age on screen. Here she ages from about 14 to somewhere in her 30s, always looks the age and never seems to be wearing makeup. I wonder if she does it with her posture. Early in the film, as a poor coal miner's kid, she slouches and slinks around, and then later she puts on dignity with the flashy dresses she wears on stage. The movie is mostly about Lynn's relationships with her husband Mooney, played by Tommy Lee Jones, and her first close show business friend and mentor, Patsy Cline, Beverly D'Angelo. Both of these relationships are developed in direct, understated, intelligent ways. We are spared, for example, a routine portrait of Mooney Lynn as official showbiz husband, and given instead a portrait of a recognizable human being who is aggressive, confident, loving, and fallible. The fact that this movie felt free to portray Mooney as hard-nosed is one of the most interesting things about it. Loretta Lynn, who had a certain amount of control over the project, obviously still has her feet on the ground and didn't insist that this movie be some kind of idealized fantasy. We are left to speculate, of course, on whether Lynn's rise to stardom was really as picaresque as Coal Miner's Daughter suggests. She seems to get on the Grand Ole Opry mighty fast, and Patsy Cline seems to adopt her almost before she knows her. But then the amazing thing about Loretta Lynn's life seems to be how fast everything happened and how wide open the avenues to success are in this country, if you're talented and, of course, lucky. The most entertaining scenes in the movie are in the middle, after the coal mines and before the top 40, when Loretta and Mooney are tooling around the back roads trying to convince country disc jockeys to play her records. The scene with Mooney taking a publicity photo of Loretta is a little gem, illustrating the press agent that resides within us all. So, anyway, how good is this movie? I think it's one of those films people like so much while they're watching it that they're inclined to think it's better than it is. It's warm, entertaining, funny, and centered around that great Sissy Spacek performance, but it's essentially pretty familiar material. Not that Loretta Lynn can be blamed that Horatio Alger wrote her life before she lived it. The movie isn't great art, but it has been made with great taste and style. It's more intelligent and observant than movie biographies of singing stars used to be. That makes it a treasure to watch, even if we sometimes have the feeling we've seen it before. It's the 40s in Kentucky, which means the 14-year-old Loretta, soon to be Lynn, Sissy Spacek, is old enough to be considered a woman. When she's not helping raise one of her dozen or so siblings, she's busy being wooed by Doolittle Lynn, Tommy Lee Jones. Back from the war, he's a cocky loudmouth who takes what he wants and decides he wants the teenaged Loretta. Against his better wishes, her father, Levon Helm, as the titular coal miner, gives his blessing, and soon Doolittle has knocked up Loretta no less than 4 times. Buying her a guitar for their anniversary, Doolittle encourages Loretta to play and sing. As she gets better, he decides it's time his wife hit the stage. Soon Doolittle is managing Loretta's growing career, arranging a recording session, and personally taking her music to country music DJs and radio stations. Every time Loretta plays, everyone who witnesses it knows they're seeing something special. None more than Doolittle. I knew nothing about Loretta Lynn before watching Coal Miner's Daughter. I couldn't even name a single one of her signature tunes. So at the very least, it was a fresh story that had plenty of surprises. The biggest being that it's as much Doolittle Lynn's story as it is Loretta's. According to the movie, his drive was just as important in Loretta Lynn's career as her songs were. And the best thing about the character of Doolittle being so prominent is that you get to watch a youngish Tommy Lee Jones really go to town. He really chews the scenery and dives headfirst into this role. It's obvious the idea of too big or too over the top was never a concern for Jones on set. Sissy Spacek won an Oscar for Coal Miner's Daughter, and it was nominated or a bunch more. That surprises me, because while it's in no way a bad movie, it doesn't really seem substantial enough to have got so much Oscar attention. In some ways, it's not much more than a feature-length soap opera. But this is the same year that the thoroughly average Ordinary People won Best Picture, beating Raging Bull, so I guess standards were a little different then. The obligatory scene in which the musician first performs in front of an audience. That's one of the many things that Coal Miner's Daughter, which opens today at the Rivoli, handles beautifully. Loretta Lynn, played with captivating daintiness by Sissy Spacek, climbs onto the stage at a Grange Hall at the urging of her husband. Her singing is wispy at first, but it grows clear and confident as she takes command of the stage. By the end of the number, she has found her footing and launched her career. The audience is enthusiastic, but not so rapt as to make the scene unbelievable. There's a little less rustling in the crowd than there has been, and a few people begin gazing at the singer. That's all. That's enough. The point has been made with the gentle touch that gives this movie its distinctive sweetness. Coal Miner's Daughter risks understating its story to make Loretta Lynn's biography part of a larger fabric, and the gamble pays off. Most of the film, the best part of it, depicts the world Miss Lynn grew up in, the world she both immortalized and lost when she became famous as a country music star. She grew up in Butcher Holler, Kentucky, a tiny place that has been faithfully reconstructed for the film, since Miss Lynn's fans have changed the real Butcher Holler from an unspoiled spot into a tourist attraction. She married at 13, and by 20 had 4 children. Neither her father nor her husband had much money, but poverty doesn't seem to have put her at any disadvantage. Her autobiography, upon which the movie is based, describes these early years as peaceful and uncomplicated, far more so than the times that followed. This part of Miss Lynn's life has been preserved in the emphatic, folksy lyrics of her songs, and some of the movie's dialogue has that same homespun sound. "You're my pride, girl, my shining pride," says Loretta's father, and amazingly the line isn't forced. "You'll just have to make up your mind, darling, whether you're his daughter or my wife," says her husband, voicing another sentiment straight out of a song. Perhaps because Loretta doesn't answer these statements or even ponder them unduly, the first part of the film takes place in the realm of clear choices and simple delights. The director, Michael Apted, sets this tone so effortlessly that it's hardly noticeable. Until in the second half of the movie, it disappears. Eventually, Miss Lynn's story moves her out of this fairy tale world and into show business. And once she becomes a success, the old values suddenly aren't much help to her anymore. This is a transition that the movie can't manage. Perhaps it should have ended at the Grand Ole Opry, where Loretta's dream is realized and her fate is sealed. Instead, the film skims over her more recent history with a protective air, like never making the big star as vivid as the little girl has been. The problem isn't simply one of candor, although Miss Lynn's book is considerably franker than the movie about what a strain her success has been. It's a matter of context. Loretta starts out as a tiny figure in the Kentucky landscape, one of many different elements in this story. The film wrenches her away and carries her off to a new setting that is far less complete and less compelling. Throughout the film, she searches for a home. Though the point is never stated, her elaborate Tennessee mansion looks like a strangely insubstantial version of the Kentucky cabin. At her father's grave, which her husband drives up to, appropriately in a bulldozer, Loretta cries, "I ain't gonna have no home now." "You got our home," the husband says, meaning to be soothing, but Loretta just weeps all the more. Mr. Apted presents some particularly delicate images to capture Loretta's uprootedness, as in a tableau of the singer, her husband, and their 4 small children. The pose recalls Loretta and her siblings in Appalachia, but this time, the family is reflected in the glass window of a recording studio. Coal Miner's Daughter features 4 extraordinary performances, each of them somewhat unexpected. Miss Spacek is luminous and lovely, easily outshining her previous work, as good as it has been. Even in the latter parts of Coal Miner's Daughter, in scenes that may strike some viewers as a pale reminder of Nashville, she holds her own. Tommy Lee Jones, as her husband Doolittle, has a strength and humor that bring the film's love story to life, and he too quite outdoes his past performances. Beverly D'Angelo, who as Patsy Cline does her own singing, Miss Spacek sings too, very nicely, makes a brief but astonishingly sharp impression. And Levon Helm, playing Loretta's father, embodies all the quiet decency that gives this film its foothold. Mr. Helm was formerly a member of the band, and he's at least as good an actor as he was a singer and drummer, which is saying quite a lot. Like Agatha and the rock drama Stardust, other movies of Mr. Apted's, Coal Miner's Daughter, does a better job of setting its scenes than of telling a story. Its characterizations and its atmosphere work better than the action, which becomes shapeless and in the manner of biographies of living subjects slightly cramped by its good intentions. Coal Miner's Daughter is rated PG, parental guidance suggested. It contains some harsh language, one violent episode, and a few sexual references. I remember Coal Miner's Daughter being one of those event DVD releases during the format's glory days, and while I was a pretty avid collector of classic titles at the time, it was one of the few that slipped by me. However, the classic Hollywood biopic is back on store shelves thanks to Via Vision Entertainment, reacquainting film fans with the story of country music icon Loretta Lynn through her rise to fame from humble beginnings. Opening in the rural Kentucky coal mining community of Van Lear, we're introduced to 13-year-old Loretta on the cusp of her 14th birthday. Her life is simple, although, like most of the townsfolk, poverty is always in close proximity despite her father's hard work under the employment of the town's sole industry and lifeblood. Depiction of this lifestyle feels very authentic, which is largely attributed to on-location filming. Loretta marries Oliver Mooney, Doolittle Lynn at age 15 with the prospect of a better life elsewhere, and finds herself a mother of 4 before 20 years old. Her rise to fame is gradual, prompted by the gift of a guitar from her husband, which leads to occasional singing at local honky-tonks and radio performances. Director Michael Apted and screenwriter Thomas Rickman don't rush with showing the whirlwind success that would eventually encompass Loretta Lynn's life, as each pivotal event throughout her journey is given time for the viewer to absorb the emotions behind it. Loretta's marriage to Mooney is the central focus of the film, one of mutual love, but constantly fraught by strain from Mooney's personal demons and feelings of inadequacy. There's a powerful statement about a man's masculinity when he's not the main breadwinner during a time when not being so was looked upon unfavorably within the working class. Unlike many music-oriented biographies that feature some painfully obvious dubbing, the film's star Sissy Spacek and supporting actress Beverly D'Angelo as Patsy Cline both impressively sing all the songs featured in the film. Spacek as Lynn is a remarkable likeness to the real-life country star, who captures the innocence of a young woman thrown into adult life at a premature age, while Tommy Lee Jones is enduring as Mooney, an instrumental figure in Loretta's life, who eventually finds his place after many years of uncertainty. Coal Miner's Daughter comes presented in 1.851 widescreen 1, a single NTSC formatted disc. And much like the recent string of classic titles Via Vision have been releasing, quality is exceptional. Picture is rich in detail, and despite the absence of bright colors throughout large portions of the film, there's solid clarity, and the image is very clean. Sound, on the other hand, makes the biggest impression via an enhanced 5.1 track with restored audio, which appropriately elevates the film's music. This week's biggest home entertainment release arrives fresh from the Oscars, where it missed the top prize, but took the most awards of the night. Bohemian Rhapsody, Fox 12, has somehow withstood any amount of critical scorn and toxic publicity regarding its accused rapist director to emerge as a strange object of popular adoration, uniting baby boomer nostalgists and teenagers alike. Quite a feat for a film that hits every stop on the bad musical biopic express, from cartoonish prosthetics to sanitized sexuality to cheese-tastic eureka scenes of creative inspiration. It's a genre with far richer scope for going wrong, or at least drably formula-bound than spectacularly right, and with biopics of Elton John, David Bowie, and Aretha Franklin, among others, all heading our way, it's been reignited big time. But what about the good ones? Several filmmakers and some very fine actors over the years have pulled off the approach of channeling a musician's actual spirit on screen, in manners both straightforwardly dramatized and wildly avant-garde, and thankfully, some of the best can be easily found online. Among the conventional Oscar-chasing brigade, Michael Apted's earthy 1980 Loretta Lynn biopic Coal Miner's Daughter, available via Amazon, remains unparalleled, having set the bar for subsequent efforts from Walk the Line to Ray. Crucially, Apted doesn't treat the country queen's rags-to-riches trajectory as a romantic celebrity origin story. Rather, it's a textured, domestically detailed character study of an ordinary Kentucky woman who happened to become famous, and Sissy Spacek's extraordinary, deservedly Oscar-graced performance treats its subject in much the same nitty-gritty way. That she does her own singing authentically enough to net a brief major label record deal is a virtuoso feat, casually worn. At the opposite end of the formal scale is François Girard's Dizzy Dazzler 32 short films about Glenn Gould, 1994, also on Amazon, which, as the title promises, is an ideally discursive, dissociated encapsulation of a subject whose eccentric brilliance would never have suited a Wikipedia on film structure. The Canadian pianist is instead captured in fragments, some biographically enacted by actor Colm Feore, others offering oblique, animated interpretations of Gould's artistry in a mosaic numbered to evoke Bach's Goldberg variations. Todd Haynes, of course, knows a thing or two about reinventing the musical biopic. I'm Not There, his abstract 2007 celebration of Bob Dylan as refracted through multiple characters, holds up beautifully, even if it's unavailable to stream in the UK. Once even harder to find, however, is his marvelous 43-minute anomaly, Superstar, the Karen Carpenter story, 1987, which ingeniously dramatizes the late singer's struggles with anxiety and anorexia using only Barbie dolls, an ironic, satire-rich stunt that gradually takes on a more tender air of psychological play therapy. Withdrawn from circulation for years following a lawsuit from the Carpenter family, it now thrives online in scuffed but oddly apt-feeling bootleg form. You can stream it for free at the Internet Archive. Scratched and messy by design is Alex Cox's still jolting punk elegy Sid and Nancy, available via iTunes, which finds a kind of extreme trash lyricism in the vomit-spattered downfall of Sex Pistols bassist Sid Vicious and his groupie girlfriend Nancy Spungen. Performed with riotous, razor-edge conviction by Gary Oldman and Chloe Webb, it's rightly hard to watch, as desolate and glamourless a plunge into the rock and roll void as we've yet seen. Prefer a little twinkle in your star portraits? Take comfort in Golden Age Hollywood, which mastered a form of musical biopic with scarcely any factual grounding whatsoever, instead pushing the musical half of the equation for all it's worth. In the delicious 1946 meringue Till the Clouds Roll By, Amazon again, though also free on YouTube, it's worth rather a lot. Ostensibly about prolific musical theater composer Jerome Kern, it glosses fictitiously over his life, instead offering one extravagantly staged number from his bursting songbook after another. Judy Garland on Look for the Silver Lining, Frank Sinatra on Old Man River, and so on. As biography, it makes Bohemian Rhapsody look like cinema verite. As a pop celebration, it's delightfully honest about its priorities. Coal Miner's Daughter, based on the autobiography of country music star Loretta Lynn, co-authored with George Vexey, was released in March of 1980. The film is remembered fondly by many, particularly by folks over the age of 50. I decided to watch it the other night, and while I had a recollection of many scenes in the film, likely from having seen it with my family, I was rather taken aback by the details I hadn't remembered. It opens in a mining town in the mountains of Kentucky, shortly after World War II. We are introduced to a large family, the Webbs, with 7 children, the eldest being 13-year-old Loretta. She is played by 29-year-old Sissy Spacek. One night, at a local jamboree, she makes eyes with a charming young man named Doolittle, or Do, as everyone calls him. His age is never specified, but he is played by Tommy Lee Jones, so he can't be a teenager, right? Well, in reality, Doolittle, real name Oliver Lynn, was around 6 years Loretta's senior. That would have made him 19 years old when he met Loretta. Loretta and Do leave the party together. He invites her to take a ride in his Jeep. She refuses, so he walks her home instead. He begins to flirt. "You know, the first time I ever seen you, I said, me and that little gal are gonna get together?" He recounts his experience in the war, before asking, "You know what D-Day is, don't ya?" He laughs at her naivete. The two arrive in front of Loretta's house. Do grabs Loretta by the arm. She starts to back away when he leans in for a kiss. He has his hands on her forearms. She keeps her arms to her sides as he kisses her. She runs up the stairs to her front door, and before she goes inside, Do calls up to her. "Hey, Loretta, I'm gonna bring my Jeep up here and take you for a ride. Ain't nothing I can't do, girl, once I set my mind to it." He falls back into a pigsty, and on that slapstick note, the grooming process has begun. The next day, Do arrives in his Jeep to pick up Loretta, and they go riding the whole day. When she comes home to her parents, her father Ted spanks her with a stick. Later, Dew shows up at the house, and the parents don't even want to look at him. When the parents are made to look harsh and unreasonable, it makes the audience side with the couple. Loretta Lynn, who rose from an impoverished childhood in Kentucky's coal fields to become a pioneering female star of country music, has died. She was 90. According to a statement from her family shared with Variety, Lynn died Tuesday in her home in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee. Memorably portrayed in an Oscar-winning turn by Sissy Spacek in the 1980 biopic Coal Miner's Daughter, drawn from Lynn's best-selling 1976 autobiography, co-authored by George Vexey, Lynn was one of the first women to rise to stardom as a country vocalist. She dominated the charts in the 1960s, when she was the top-charting femme country singer, and 70s, when she was second only to Dolly Parton, ringing up 11 number-one country hits in her own right and another 5 chart toppers with Conway Twitty, her regular duet partner of the 70s. In all, she charted 51 top 10 country singles. Unlike most of her contemporaries, she wrote a great deal of her material, beginning with her first chart hit, 1960's I'm a Honky-Tonk Girl. Beyond her pointed songs that address traditional honky-tonk themes like infidelity and divorce from the woman's point of view, a rarity in country, she penned numbers that fearlessly essayed contemporary topics ranging from the Vietnam War to contraception. Though the hits dried up for Lynn after the early 80s, she remained a beloved and revered figure. Lynn was widely believed to be the model for Barbara Jean, the sensitive and tragic fictional country star in Robert Altman's 1975 ensemble film Nashville, set in Music City. Singer-actress Ronee Blakley received Oscar, Golden Globe, and Grammy nominations for her work in the role. Though, like her movie doppelganger, Lynn was frequently sidetracked by illness throughout her career, she remained active as a concert performer and recording artist into the new millennium, and received a fresh boost as a septuagenarian. In 2004, she recorded a new album, Van Leer Rose, with producer-guitarist Jack White of the White Stripes that won 2 Grammys and exposed her to a new audience of young rock listeners. She was born Loretta Webb in Butcher Holler Key, the second of 8 children. Her younger sister, Brenda Gale, also rose to fame as country star Crystal Gale. Her father, a coal miner, later died from black lung disease. At the age of 15, after enduring a life of grinding poverty, she married Army vet and local moonshiner Oliver Lynn, later known to the singer's fans by his sobriquets Doolittle and Mooney. The couple left Kentucky for Washington State, where they raised 4 children together. Encouraged by her husband-manager to take up the guitar and sing, Lynn began performing in local clubs, sometimes backed by her brother J. Lee Webb. In Tacoma, she was discovered by Norm Burley, who operated the Vancouver-based independent label Zero Records. I'm a Honky-Tonk Girl, Lynn's first single for Zero, was recorded in Hollywood in February 1960 with a crack band that included steel guitarist Roy Lanham and pedal steel ace Speedy West. The song soared to number 14 on the U.S. country chart and established Lynn as a hot new voice in country music. After a stint as a demo artist and in-house songwriter for the Wilburn Brothers Publishing Company, Lynn and her husband relocated to Nashville, where she was signed to country powerhouse Decca Records and placed under the tutelage of producer Owen Bradley. Her number 6 single, Success, in 1962 inaugurated a string of hits that made her, for a time, the only real rival to country's lone established female star, Kitty Wells. Lynn's sole contemporaneous rival, fellow Bradley Charge Patsy Cline, was killed in a plane crash in March 1963. Lynn's hard-edged top 10 entries included Before I'm Over You, number 4, 1963, Wine, Women, and Song, and Happy Birthday, both number 3, 1964, and the autobiographical Blue Kentucky Girl, number 7, 1965, and a number 6 cover hit in 1979 for Emmylou Harris. She was also memorably paired with her idol, Texas honky-tonker Ernest Tubb, in a series of early singles. She hit her stride in the late 60s with several major hits, many of them self-penned and some of them inspired by her oft wayward husband. She began 1966 with the topical Vietnam song Dear Uncle Sam, number 4, and the keen-edged You Ain't Woman Enough, number 2, then scored her first chart topper that year with her highly personal composition Don't Come Home A-Drinkin' with Lovin' on Your Mind. Fist City, 1968, and Woman of the World, Leave My World Alone, 1969, succeeded it at the pinnacle. Coal Miner's Daughter, the autobiographical song that gave her memoir its title, reached number 1 in 1970. Her longest-running hit, One's on the Way, number 1 for 16 weeks, followed a year later. That same year, Lynn was paired for the first time with Twitty, one of Decca's established male hitmakers. Their 14 chart singles together included a run of 5 number 1 duets in 1971-75. After the Fire Is Gone, a Grammy winner for Best Country Duo Group Performance, Lead Me On, Louisiana Woman, Mississippi Man, As Soon as I Hang Up the Phone, and Feelin's. Lynn continued to score as a solo artist with memorable singles like the divorce-themed Rated X, number 1, 1972, the controversial look at birth control, The Pill, number 5, 1975, and She's Got You, a cover of the Patsy Cline hit, and Out of My Head and Back in My Bed, both of which reached number 1 in 1977. The critical and popular success of Michael Apted's feature, Coal Miner's Daughter, helped elevate her to legend status. But her sound grew increasingly out of sync with contemporary tastes, and she logged her last top 10 single, I Lie, in 1982. She parted company with MCA Records in 1988. Fittingly, her last album for the label was a duet set with Twitty, and wouldn't reappear solo on a major label for 16 years. However, she teamed with fellow stars Dolly Parton and Tammy Wynette for the Columbia album Honky Tonk Angels in 1993. Lynn busied herself as a live performer. She also operated a studio and museum at her Hurricane Mills 10 home and sponsored an annual championship motocross race. In the early 90s, she reined in her concert schedule to care for her ailing husband, who died in August 1996. The couple had been married for 48 years. She began the new millennium with an album, Still Country, for the Nashville independent Audium Records. However, it wasn't until she teamed with longtime admirer Jack White in 2004 at age 72 that she gained new attention and fresh respect. Sporting 13 new songs either written or co-written by Lynn, Van Leer Rose collected a Grammy in 2005 as Best Country Album, while its single Portland, Oregon drew the Best Country Collaboration Award for Lynn and White. Lynn was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1988 and was a Kennedy Center honoree in 2003. She received Lifetime Achievement Award recognition from the Recording Academy in 2010. Lynn's late career revival continued with the 2016 album Full Circle, co-produced by her daughter Patsy Lynn Russell and John Carter Cash, son of Johnny Cash. It included duets with Elvis Costello and Willie Nelson. Other new albums followed, including White Christmas Blue, also in 2016, Wouldn't It Be Great, 2018, and the final new album released during her lifetime, Still Woman Enough, which featured vocal collaborations with Tanya Tucker, Margot Price, Reba McEntire, and Carrie Underwood on remakes of some of her oldies, along with some newer compositions. Still Woman Enough shares a title with a second autobiography she released in 2002. She is survived by 3 daughters and a son. Another son, Jack, drowned accidentally in 1984, and daughter Betty Sue Lynn died in 2013. Lynn had 17 grandchildren and 4 step-grandchildren. Several members of the family followed Loretta into singing, at least for a season. In the late 1990s, Lynn's twin daughters Peggy and Patsy had a recording career as the Lynns, releasing an album on Reprise that spawned some charting singles. In 2021, granddaughter Taylor Lynn released an album, Taylor Lynn Sings Loretta Lynn. The country music world lost a legend when Loretta Lynn passed away at the age of 90 on October 4th. From her beginnings as a coal miner's daughter in Butcher Hollow, Kentucky, to her reign as country queen with over 100 awards and honors to her name, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom, Lynn's life was the stuff Hollywood movies are made of. And in 1980, Hollywood made that movie, Coal Miner's Daughter, based on Lynn's own memoir. Celebrity biopics have been around practically as long as the movie industry itself. Some have been great successes, like 1981's Frances and 2004's Ray, but many more have missed the mark, like 1991's The Doors and 2004's Beyond the Sea, Kevin Spacey's film about the life of crooner Bobby Darin. The difference between success and failure is, of course, dependent on any number of factors, like the quality of the writing, the direction, and just how compelling the subject itself may be. But what truly makes a celebrity story captivating and convincing is the casting of the actor playing the celebrity. It's not enough for the actor to simply resemble the famous person they're portraying. They must also capture the celebrity's essence, what makes them tick, what makes them connect with audiences, and what makes them persuasive. Few actors did that better than Sissy Spacek in Coal Miner's Daughter. Spacek became Loretta Lynn, and in remembrance of Loretta Lynn's life and legacy, it's important to revisit Spacek's groundbreaking performance that became an homage to the country music superstar. At first glance, Spacek may have seemed to be the least likely person to portray the country icon. With her fine, blondish red hair, hazel eyes, and freckled face, her physical appearance didn't exactly match Lynn's, a woman with thick brown hair, gray eyes, and porcelain-like skin. But it was actually Lynn herself who chose Spacek to play her on film. She was looking through a pile of pictures, and when she came to one of me, she said, "That's her. That's the coal miner's daughter," Spacek said in a 1980 New York Times interview. Lynn saw beyond Spacek's appearance and knew instinctively that Spacek had an inner quality that would allow her to bring Lynn to life on screen. Spacek was 30 years old when she filmed Coal Miner's Daughter, but she faced the seemingly insurmountable task of playing Lynn from ages 13 to 40, a challenge for even the most seasoned performer. Yet, when Spacek first appears in the film as the impoverished teen living in a rickety shack with 7 siblings, there isn't a moment where viewers question Spacek's authenticity. Aside from nailing the sound of Lynn's speaking voice and deep Kentucky accent, Spacek carries herself like a shy, awkward girl just entering adolescence, with posture somewhat inverted and eyes that seem afraid to look up and make direct contact. At the same time, however, Spacek is able to display the qualities of a mature woman, showing the wariness of an elder sibling forced to take on the role of second mother to the family. There's a hardness to Spacek's Lynn beneath the teenager's simplicity and virtue, and maybe that's what Lynn saw when she first looked at Spacek's picture. There's a scene near the beginning of the film where Loretta is at a town dance, with Spacek conveying all the joy and abandon of a 14-year-old girl getting the rare opportunity to let off some steam, giggle with her friends, and even flirt a little with Doolittle Lynn, Tommy Lee Jones. But when her father says the fun is over and it's time to go home, that hardness comes across again. It's a subtle but masterful transformation. Although it's uncomfortable to watch the physical abuse Loretta suffered at the hands of her father and her husband, not to mention her marriage at age 15 to 22-year-old Doolittle, these events were part of Lynn's true story, and Spacek handles them sensitively. Yes, the young Loretta was uneducated, naive, and not fully prepared for adulthood, but she wasn't dumb, and she wasn't a shrinking violet. And Spacek was especially adept at showing Lynn's complex personality. After her disastrous wedding night with Doo, when he tries to explain to her that she'll get used to it, Loretta snaps back, "I ain't gonna get used to you getting on me and sweating like an old pig." Spacek's delivery of that line is as hilarious as it is perfunctory. Boundaries have been established, and there will be no further discussion. As Loretta learns to stand up to Doo and assert her independence, there is a physical change in Spacek too. She stands taller, her voice is stronger, she looks him in the eye. These understated pieces of Spacek's performance helped capture Lynn's evolution as a woman. Audiences felt like they were watching an old friend grow up before their eyes. There's a tonal shift in the film following the death of Loretta's father. While still wide-eyed and not altogether sophisticated, Spacek presents a Loretta who's now more jaded and less trusting of what she sees happening around her. At her father's burial site, Dew teases Loretta a bit and asks her why she's brought plastic flowers to the graveside. Wearily, Loretta responds, "Because they don't die. The real ones just die, like everything else." Although only 27 years old at this point in the film, Spacek shows viewers Loretta at a pivotal point of maturity in her life. The world Loretta once knew is slipping away, and she's unsure how to navigate through one where she has no sure footing. As Dew encourages Loretta's singing, Spacek shows audiences a woman coming into her own and finding a greater purpose. When a local radio DJ lies to Loretta and Dew about playing her record on the air, Loretta lets him have it in a takedown for the ages. Spacek is now portraying a woman who no longer sits back and lets others take control. Loretta Lynn is a force with which to be reckoned. When Loretta catches a drunken Dew in the back seat of a car with another woman, the innocent young girl who was once clueless about what the word horny meant has been replaced with someone who suffers no fools. "Woman, if you want to keep that arm, you better get it off my husband," Loretta says calmly yet sternly before yanking Dew from the car. Later, in a public fight scene in which Dew hits Loretta, Loretta hits him back for the first time. The rage with which Spacek lashes out in the scene and the sense of empowerment and release that comes with it ignite the screen. Then there's the voice. Spacek does all of her own singing in the film, and she was coached by Loretta Lynn herself. Spacek's emulation of Lynn's voice is so precise, it's difficult to distinguish between the two women's vocals. But it's more than Spacek's ability to replicate Lynn's sound and intonation that makes her singing so spectacular. It's Spacek's ability to capture the emotion within Lynn's songs themselves. Lynn was always able to express the feelings behind the words she sang, the anguish, delight, weariness, and fear. Spacek understood this and was able to channel what was at the heart of Lynn's songs. She wasn't just a mimic, she was an interpreter. And this is what elevates Spacek's portrayal of Lynn. Perhaps Spacek's greatest accomplishment in Coal Miner's Daughter is the way in which she conveys all the complexity of a woman who gets more than she could have ever dreamed from life, and how it nearly destroys her. While Lynn's career is exploding, Lynn herself is imploding, and Spacek flawlessly reveals a woman barely hanging on. Her near breakdown during a concert performance is shattering, and it's arguably Spacek's finest moment in the film. "One day I was just a little girl, and the next day I was married and having babies. Next day I was out here singing for y'all." This simple piece of dialogue exemplifies the depth of Spacek's performance, from guileless child to young mother to international superstar. The story of Loretta Lynn was so much more than a rags-to-riches tale, and Spacek showed audiences all the happiness, pain, elation, and disappointment in the life of the music legend. The film redefined what a celebrity biopic could be, and Spacek's performance, still remembered and admired 42 years later, set a new standard. Spacek and Lynn remained friends for years following the release of Coal Miner's Daughter. "Today is a sad day," Spacek remarked in a statement to Deadline about Lynn's death. "The world lost a magnificent human being. Loretta Lynn was a great artist, a strong and resilient country music pioneer, and a precious friend. I am heartbroken. Thankfully, we will always have Spacek's outstanding performance as a lasting tribute to the legendary singer." The Up series, this is unsurprising. Although the director occasionally ventured into high-profile territory, he made the 007 entry. The World Is Not Enough. As well as Gorillaz in The Mustang, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, he was most comfortable with scripts that focused on characters, although Lynn's career was noteworthy, her volatile marriage to do it. Lynn Tommy Lee Jones provides the film's meat and potato style was an extraordinary love story, peppered with instances of infidelity and mutual abuse. Coal Miner's Daughter sugarcoats nothing. Prefer a warts and all behind the scenes look at a union that was romanticized by the media, although Coal Miner's Daughter covers only the early years of their time together, roughly the mid-1940s. Until 1997, they were married for nearly 50 years until his death in 1996. At the time Spacek made Coal Miner's Daughter, she was 30 years old. that matched Lynn's age during the bulk of the film, the 1960s, but requires a suspension of disbelief in the early scenes when Lynn is in her teens. Apted called his decision not to cast a younger actress for these sequences an artistic choice. Certainly Spacek's performance never wavers. And once one accepts that the character is intended to be a lot younger than she looks, it's not a distraction. Her performance, the one standout aspect of an otherwise good but not great motion picture, was honored with an Oscar. The actress did all her own singing and is a respectable facsimile. Originally, it was intended to have Lynn overdub Spacek singing, but after hearing the actress' rendition of the song, Apted opted against it, although Lynn was involved in the production. She's never heard on the soundtrack for Tommy Lee Jones. This was something of a breakthrough role prior to Coal Miner's Daughter. His highest profile part had been in the box office bomb. The Betsy, his portrayal of Dewitt Lynn, got them noticed he would goon to appear in the Executioner song, getting Lonesome Dove before making a jump to the A-list with The Fugitive. Although most of Coal Miner's Daughter focuses on the interactions between Spacek and Jones. Solid supporting turns are provided by Beverly D'Angelo as Patty Klein and Elle Helm as Loretta's coal mining father Ted. Coal Miner's Daughter uses a linear storyline based primarily on Lynn's 1976 autobiography of the same name. It starts in 1945 as 13-year-old Loretta, one of 8 children in the web. Family First sets eyes on the handsome, brash 20-year-old Dit Lynn within 2 years. The pair have married to gain the approval of Loretta's father, Ted Doit. Makes 2 promises, 1 never to strike Loretta, and 2 never to take her away. From Butcher Hollow, Kentucky, he ultimately breaks both by the time Loretta is 19. She has 4 children, unable to endure the brutal conditions of the coal mine. Diddle transplants his family to Washington State. While there, Loretta begins local weekend singing engagements with D. Little's full encouragement. This leads to Cutting A. Record the first single of which is I'm a Honky Tonk Girl, Doolittle, and Loretta go on a promotional tour of local radio stations, pushing for DJs to play the tune as a result of this. I'm a Honky Tonk Girls hits the country charts, earning Loretta a chance to appear on the Grand Ole Opry. Enjoy further success and befriend one of her idols, Patty Klein, around the same time her father dies. Back in Kentucky, although Lynn's story is ripe for opportunities to ramp up the melodrama, as in a country ballad, Apted resists, preferring to keep things even. Keel emotional reactions percolate gradually through this approach. The mutual domestic violence isn't overdone, typically occurring when Diddle is drunk. It's not depicted in a sensationalistic fashion and doesn't present Loretta as a punching back on at least one occasion. Diddle comes out of one of these spats in a far worse condition than his wife appreciating Lynn's music. Isn't a prerequisite for enjoying Coal Miner's Daughter. The characters are well delineated and the story is sufficiently engaging for the motion picture to stand on its own merits. Irrespective of a viewer's affinity for the main character's song catalog, it goes without saying, however, that those with a warm spot for country music, and Lynn's work in particular, will get more out of the film. It could be argued that Coal Miner's Daughter developed a template for the modern musical biopic, one that has gotten extensive use in the last half-dozen years, with an increasing number of entries into the genre. The simplicity and lack of excess sets Coal Miner's Daughter apart and gives it a stronger dramatic backbone than many of the movies to follow. Other information about this film. Just yesterday we lost the First Lady of country music, and I decided to watch the movie about her life. I have known about this film for quite some time, and I have even owned it for quite some time, but I haven't sat down and watched it until now. I have wanted to see it, but just kept putting it off. Loretta Lynn was a huge figure in country music history. She paved the way for many female musicians, and if you ask any classic country music fan their favorite female artist, Loretta Lynn is at the top of most of those people's lists. I wanted to honor her in some way, and I think this is a good way. She was proud of this film, and I wanted to watch it. So here we are. Let's dive in. This movie's plot tells itself. It simply tells the life story of Loretta Lynn from basically 1945 to 80. The film starts when Loretta Webb is a teenager and she starts to fall in love with Oliver Dunlin, Tommy Lee Jones, Loretta's father Ted Lonhelm, and mother. Clara Phyllis Bwens do not approve of her new romance with Du. Things move fast between Du and Loretta, and they decide to get married. Loretta is only 15 at the time of her marriage, and just a few months into the marriage, they leave Butcher Hollow, Kentucky for Washington State. Loretta and Du have 4 children before Loretta turns 20 while taking care of the kids. Loretta sings to them, and Du recognizes that she has a real talent. He buys her a guitar, and she learns how to play it, and soon is performing in front of local crowds and clubs. Although she was really nervous, at the beginning, soon she starts to get a lot of buzz around the western part of the country, but she soon receives news that will shake her entire world. Her father passed away. They go back to Kentucky to go to the funeral, but they also have plans to get Loretta recognized in the eastern part of the country. Du acts as Loretta's manager and does a great job to get her recognized. They go on a road trip to visit radio stations around the area to get her new song, I'm a Honky Tonk Girl, some airplay. The road trip was successful, and she quickly gains enough popularity to play the Grand Ole Opry in the meantime. Ernest Tubb keeps booking her for his shows, and she quickly develops a friendship with Patty Clean. Beverly D'Angelo, Loretta, and Patty start touring together and think things are going great for her career, but her marriage is still not working with Du. Despite their love for each other, they don't really mesh. The rest of the film shows their marriage struggles. Loretta's struggle with her career and busy schedule and trying to raise a family. I've seen random clips of the movie before, but this was the first time I've seen it in its entirety. My first thought was, why did it take so long? This was a fantastic biopic. I would go as far as to say that Spacek's performance as Loretta Lynn may be the best performance ever in the history of music biopics. Her speaking voice was about as close to Loretta as anyone could get. She performed all of Loretta's songs and did a fantastic job. Beverly D'Angelo did a solid job portraying Patty Clean, and just like Spacek, D'Angelo performed all of Patty's songs on the film. I was blown away how well Spacek did in this film. She spent basically a full year with Loretta to learn how to talk and sing like her, and it shows. Tommy Lee Jones did a great job playing Du as well, and despite wanting to hate him, they somehow still made him somewhat likable. And I believe that was the goal, because Loretta Lynn definitely wouldn't have become a superstar without him. It was also cool to see Ernest Tubb Minnie Pearl and Roy Aku make cameos in the movie. The casting was perfect, and I can't stress enough how well Spacek did in this film. Prior to watching this, I already knew quite a bit about Loretta Lynn's life. The only thing I didn't really know was that she and Du moved to Washington State. I knew they left Kentucky, but I didn't know that they moved across the country. Other than that, I knew what to expect, and that was fine. The movie received 7 nominations for the Academy Awards, and Spacek took home the Oscar for Best Actress for her performance in this film. Again, it was well-deserved. At the end of the movie, I watched a brief Loretta Lynn interview, and it was great to hear her talk about it and how the director and Universal worked with her to make sure the film was done the right way. I have always liked Loretta Lynn because she is definitely one of the most real country music artists ever. There is nothing fake about her. Fame didn't change her, and she never forgot where she came from. Also, her music is great. Whether you are a country music fan or not, I still recommend watching this film. This was a fantastic biopic. And it is a great indicator of how things were back in the 40s to 60s, especially in this part of the United States. I can't imagine marrying and having a family at such a young age, but that was pretty common back then. Loretta Lynn's life must have been such a whirlwind at 15. She is married and living in a poor sea town in Kentucky. And after having 4 kids, and with those kids practically grown, she becomes the biggest act in country music. She loses her best friend in the music business, and then has another set of twins. She had a very unique story, and it played out on film wonderfully. I'm glad I finally watched it, and I'll definitely watch it again. Loretta Lynn is pretty famous enough that I know her name. Famous enough that I know she was a country singer. Famous enough that they made a biopic about her. Famous enough. The I Knew That movie existed 35 years after it was made, but not famous enough that I know any more than that about her. So, is her story interesting and worth telling? Well, Coal Miner's Daughter never really proved that to me. It's the 40s in Kentucky, which means the 14-year-old Loretta, soon to be Lynn Spacek, is old enough to be considered a woman when she's not helping raise one of her dozen or so siblings. She's busy being wooed by Dit Lynn Tommy Lee Jones back from the war. He's a cocky loudmouth who takes what he wants and decides he wants the teenage Loretta against his better wishes. Her father, Lon Helm, as the titular coal miner, gives his blessing, and soon Doit has knocked up Loretta less than 4 times buying her a guitar for their anniversary. Doit encourages Loretta to play and sing as she gets better. He decides it's time his wife hit the stage soon. Diddle is managing Loretta's growing career, arranging a recording session, and personally taking her music to country music DJs and radio stations every time Loretta plays. Everyone who witnesses it knows they're seeing something special. None more than Doit. I knew nothing about Loretta Lynn. Before, for watching Coal Miner's Daughter, I couldn't even name a single one of her signature tunes. So, at the very least, it was a fresh story that had plenty of surprises. The biggest being that it's as much D. Little Lynn's story as it is Loretta, according to the movie. His drive was just as important in Loretta Lynn's career as her songs were. And the best thing about the character of Diddle being so prominent is that you get to watch a youngish Tommy Lee Jones really go to town. He really chewed the scenery and dives headfirst into this role. It's obvious the idea of too big or too over the top was never a concern for Jones on set. Spacek won an Oscar for Coal Miner's Daughter, and it was nominated. Or a bunch more that surprises me. Because while it's in no way a bad movie, it doesn't really seem substantial enough to have got so much Oscar attention in some ways. It's not much more than a feature-length soap opera. But this is the same year that the thoroughly average Ordinary People won Best Picture beating R and Bull. So I guess standards were a little different, then more details. Well, I was born a coal miner's daughter. Slash in a cabin on a hill in Butcher Holler goes the song by Loretta Lynn, who's been called the first lady of country music. It continues, we were poor, but we had love. This drama is based on her best-selling autobiography at 13. Loretta is living with her parents and 6 siblings in a ramshackle house in backwoods Appalachia. Her father, Levin Helm, works in the coal mines and can barely make ends meet. It seems at the outset that Loretta Spacek will be stuck in poverty for the rest of her life. Then she meets and is courted by Diddle Tommy Lee Jones, a spunky young man who has just returned from a stint in the army. He immediately takes a fancy to Loretta and buys one of her pies at a church social. Despite her parents' disapproval, she marries him. A fellow tells Diddle that there are only 3 choices in Butcher Holler: working in the coal mines, moonshine, or moving down the line. Loretta's ambitious husband decides to immigrate to Washington State. Later, he sends for his pregnant wife. Loretta tearfully says goodbye to her father, who assures her she is the shining pride of his life. 6 years and 4 children later, Loretta has settled into the role of wife and mother, but all that changes when Diddle gives her a Gibson guitar for their anniversary, convinced that she can become a star. He gets Loretta a gig at a local bar, leads her to a studio to tape a song she's written called Honky Tonk Girl, and then hands out a copy of the ballad to every disc jockey from Washington to Nashville. Their grueling tour by car in which they eat, sleep, and dress is successful. The song hits the national charts soon after. Loretta makes her debut at the Grando. OPI director Michael Apted does a stunning job pacing the first segment of Coal Miner's Daughter, his eye for details in the different Miller of Kentucky, and Washington helps him illuminate the transformation of Loretta and Dee's lives. Spacek is charming as the child bride, and the blooming artist Tommy Lee Jones is credible and energetic as her domineering husband, and Levon Helm is touching as her loving father. Getting here is one thing, being here is another. The overnight success tells her mate, once Loretta meets Patty Clean Beverly, D'Angelo, the reigning queen of country music, she sees herself in a new light. DeWitt loses the battle to keep control of her career and bows out of the picture to become caretaker of their children. The money flows in. Loretta becomes a superstar thanks to her continuous singing on the road. Her husband manages their new ranch, although they lead increasingly separate lives. Diddle is on hand to support his wife when she suffers a nervous breakdown due to exhaustion. In the end, they celebrate their turbulent, oddly enduring relationship. The screenplay by Tom Rickman is not really about their rags to riches lives or the difficulties of chiz. It is an appealing story about a marriage in which husband and wife switch roles and learn to live with each other's personality. Metamorphoses, Coal Miner's Daughter speaks to the heart and contains enough truths about relationships to make it universally applicable. Coal Miner's Daughter is a musical biopic without hysteria, a sweet-souled movie in a genre known for its flamboyant miseries and luxuriant despairs, based on the funny, orrery, naively egotistical autobiography of country music, Queen Loretta Lynn, written with George Vexey. The movie is good-hearted in a simple way that usually embarrasses big city audiences, yet I've rarely seen so many people smiling contentedly at the screen. The back movie chronicles one of the famous happy marriages of show business when she was all of 13. Loretta Webb of Butcher Holler, Kentucky, deep in the coal mining country, was successfully wooed by Dit Lin A., hotshot just out of the army after fathering 4 children. Dit, or Duazes, Loretta calls him, pushed his 18-year-old wife into a singing career despite much loneliness and occasional bouts of alcoholic disaffection. He has championed her ever since. The Lind, who acted as advisors on the production, obviously want to share the lessons of their marriage. Their self-love is so unpretentious, we can hardly object who would deny them a measure of self-satisfaction. Coal Miner's Daughter celebrates the blessed ordinariness of country music. People the ordinariness Robert Allman turned inside out in his classic Nashville. This movie, an anti-Nashville, says that country music stars are really as straightforward as they present themselves on stage. In the end, the simplicity and niceness lessen the movie. Coal Miner's Daughter is often lovely, but it's too tame for art. The director, Englishman Michael, Apted Agatha, and the screenwriter Tom Rickman, who was born in Kentucky, do their best work in the early scenes, which are set among the backcountry people of the Cumberland Plateau. Apted, who has a superb sense of design and mood, knows perfectly well that the combination of scraggly buildings and cold, blackened, worn-out faces set against a background of great beauty carries an almost automatic emotional charge, and he doesn't linger. He doesn't make poverty picturesque in passing. We notice the impeccable rightness of the details. Levon Helm, the drummer from the band, plays Loretta's exhausted coal miner father with a lusterless, melancholy voice. Her mother is not so much acted as embodied by a woman of heart-stopping beauty. Folk singer Phyllis Bowens, who has the broad forehead and lank hair of the mother holding young children to her breast. In Dorothea Lange's most famous Depression-era photograph, in one scene, 4 or 5 hungry-looking children sit at a rough wooden table with the yellowish light of a kerosene lamp illuminating their faces and the floral-patterned wallpaper behind them. Lon Helm turns on the radio for the Grand Ole Opry broadcast, and Phyllis Bowens breaks into a kind of heavy-footed stomp-a-point of poetic perfection that the movie never attains again in the courtship and marriage of Dew and Loretta. The filmmakers are trying to capture something unusual, not a deep sexual attraction, but a mutual longing for partnership that is as powerful as fated as the greatest of romance. The revelation here is Tommy Lee Jones in some of his earlier pictures. The Betsy eyes of Laura Mars Jones, shy of acting, ducked his head away from the camera and ran through his lines skittishly, but now he has stopped fighting what he's doing, alien hard-muscled man with roux skin and a flat, pale face. Jones is burdened with an orangey DY job on his hair that makes him look like How Duty, but it turns the hillbilly awkwardness of his makeup to good account. It shows us the animal grain, the shrewdness inside the hick, his sudden nervous grin shading off Findesness says, Stouse, I'm not as dumb as I look. On of the saddest and most beautifully managed things in the movie is the way to still wearing his boots and jeans gets Chevy in the gut, and vaguely Melano-Ashige's Jones gives him his wheat-soden dignity that's immensely touching. We may not feel as close to Loretta, who isn't so clearly focused a character. I don't think Rickman ever figured out what he wanted to say about Loretta Lynn and the relation of her music to her life. We see her zinging only once when she's a kid in Spacek, who's physically very convincing as a 13-year-old, doesn't give her any specific character as she gets older. We're puzzled when Du suddenly pushes his mother of four into a singing career. It's as if he had some flash in the night that his wife was a performing genius. And after a short period of reluctance, she simply agreed with him. Her drive upward falls in and out of cliche. For instance, she sings to a noisy, indifferent bar crowd, which suddenly falls silent in open-mouthed wonder. A standard bit. On the other hand, the next major sequence is startling and funny, as Du and Loretta drive around Kentucky and Tennessee with her demo. Single, she strong-arms disc jockeys by breaking into long, exasperated tirade about her life and trials and 4 children and husband and so on, until the poor jerks put the record on the air. But this is the last time that the showbiz details feel fresh. Once Loretta ascends to country music heaven with an instant success at the Grand Ole Opry. All is sweetness and light. She has one triumph after another, and everyone is extraordinarily nice to her. Patty Klein. Beverly D'Angelo, for example, the reigning country music queen, who feels not the slightest twinge of jealousy and embraces Loretta as a close friend. That shows you Robert Altman to our dismay. The movie falls into a lockstep, utterly predictable, traveling on the road, exhaustion, nervous breakdown, recovery. Fresh triumphs, there's no surprise, no idiosyncrasy, and Altman has ruined us. For a movie about the country music scene without quirks, and we wait for an emotional climax that never comes. Basic sings Loretta Lynn's songs accurately, but with little intensity of feeling. Listening to that tiny voice, we can't hear any pain or joy, as we could in Ronee Blakley's heart-wrenching work in Nashville, with her huge, unblinking eyes and demon child freckles and put-upon manner. Spake comes off as too vague, almost weightless for the adult Loretta Lynn, who is a very shrewd and complicated woman. The filmmakers established Loretta's roots beautifully, but then they failed to show us how she transforms her experience into art, and the movie evaporates into a cloud of pleasantness. This is an entry from the Alan Watches Movies Best Picture project, where Alan will rewatch nominated movies from each year and choose who actually should have won Cole. Miner's Daughter 1980 had 7 Academy Awards nominations, including Best Picture, a vibrant and well-made biographical musical. Coal Miner's Daughter is a great look at the life of a country music legend, L. Lee, despite beginning far better than it ends, Cole. Miner's Daughter is such an interesting biography, mainly because it is actually at its best when the world was being built and we were learning the origins of how Lynn came from poverty to become one of America's greatest stars, and sort of lulls once she takes off for stardom. Spake Carey Missing the River is tremendous in her Best Actress winning portrayal of Loretta Lynn and carries the movie beautifully. Her ability to show every side of Lynn is a marvel to watch, bringing her from an innocent and clueless 13-year-old to a young mother, turning into a star and finally into a veteran music hero, dealing with the pains of a tireless pursuit of greatness. A young Tommy Lee Jones is great as Lynn's husband, brilliantly bringing to a life a romance that lives in the country music folklore. Du has about 3 gears, ambitiously loving drunk and dangerous and depressed. Jones doesn't expand too far past these three versions of Do, but his ability to play off the soft, innocent Spake brings to Lynn is what makes the first hour of this movie so memorable and powerful, despite how compelling the first hour or so is. The film loses a ton of steam when Lynn transforms into the star we know. The musical scenes of her on the road are fine, but kind of a snooze, and the movie does not ride its early momentum to its rather sudden and uneventful end. Part of the problem is that we see Loretta and Do fight, then make up about 3-2. Many times creating a very repetitive spiral at the beginning of the third act. What keeps Coal Miner's Daughter from being one of the great musicals or biopics is that lack of punch in the welcome to an exciting year-long project here at the Nerdy 1980 was an exciting year for films, giving us a lot of films that would go on to be beloved favorites and cult classics. It was also the start to a major shift in cultural and societal norms, and some of those still reverberate to this day. The articles will come out in most cases on the same day the films hit theaters in 1980, so that it is their true 40th anniversaries. All films are also watched again for the purposes of these reviews and are not being done from memory. In some cases, it truly will be the first time we've seen them. I can already hear people screaming about me mentioning it. Has flaws. I'm sorry, but it does, and I will get to those in a moment. Before that, however, I will say Spacek is simply stunning in this film, while Tommy Lee Jones is no Slother Spax, simply runs rings around everyone else in the film, and it's easy to see why she won the Academy Award for the role. Now, as to the flaws, there is no question that Loretta Lynn's childhood shaped her into the woman she would become. It makes total sense why the film chose to spend much time on her childhood in Butcher Hollow and her courtship with Do, but it's to the detriment of the rest of the film once she marries Do. It feels as though the rest of the film is seen as a series of billboards you're speeding by. On the highway, you get the big points, but you'll never read the fine print. As an example, the film makes it clear that Lynn and Patty Clean became extremely close, but you never understand why this relationship simply exists, because the film tells you it does when Klein passes away later in the film. Her passing loses a lot of potential emotional impact because you just didn't get to know her. That well within the four walls of the film, Coal Miner's Daughter would have been far better served if it had shortened the time span of Lynn's life. It covered or simply bitten the bullet and run for another 30 minutes. None of. This is to say it's a bad movie, far from it. It's to say that it had a lot of wasted potential. I feel when so many movies overload you on inconsequential information. Coal Miner's Daughter did the exact opposite. It had missed opportunities to let you know the Loretta Lynn story even deeper. I remember Coal Miner's Daughter being one of those event DVD releases during the format's glory days. And while I was a pretty avid collector of classic titles, at the time it was one of the few that slipped by me. However, the classic Hollywood biopic is back on store shelves, thanks to Via Vision Entertainment, reacquainting film fans with the story of country music icon Loretta Lynn. Through her rise to fame from humble beginnings, opening in the Kentucky coal mining community of Van Leer, were introduced to 13-year-old Loretta on the cusp of her 14th birthday. Her life is simple, although like most of the town's folk, poverty is always in close proximity despite her father's hard work. Under the employment of the town's soul industry, and lifeblood depiction of this lifestyle feels very authentic, which is largely attributed to on-location filming. Loretta marries Oliver Mooney D. Little. Lynn at age 15 with the prospect ECT of a better life elsewhere, and finds herself a mother of 4 before 20 years. Her rise to fame is gradual, prompted by the gift of a guitar from her husband, which leads to occasional singing at local honky-tonk and radio performances. Director Michael Apted and screenwriter Thomas Rickman don't rush with showing the whirlwind success that would eventually encompass Loretta Lynn's life. as each pivotal event throughout her journey is given time for the viewer to absorb the emotions behind it. Loretta's marriage to Mooney is the central focus of the film, one of mutual love but constantly fraught by strain from Mooney's personal demons and feelings of inadequacy. There's a powerful statement about a man's masculinity when he's not the main breadwinner during a time when not being so was looked upon unfavorably within the working class, unlike many music-oriented biographies that feature some painfully obvious dubbing. The film star Spacek and supporting actress Beverly D'Angelo as Patti Klein both impressively sing all the songs featured in the film. Spake as Lynn is a remarkable likeness to the real-life country star who captures the innocence of a young woman thrown into adult life at a premature age, while Tommy Lee Jones is enduring as Mooney, an instrumental figure in Loretta's life who eventually finds his place after many years of uncertainty. Coal Miner's Daughter comes presented in 1.85:1 widescreen WA. Single NTSC formatted disc, and much like the recent string of classic titles via Vision have been releasing, quality is exceptional. Picture is rich in detail, and despite the absence of bright colors, throughout large portions of the film, there's solid clarity and the image is very clean. Sound, on the other hand, makes the biggest impression via an enhanced 5.1 track with restored audio, which appropriately elevates the film's music. Bonus content consists mostly of commemorative material, highlighting the film's significance to country music and the rural working class, spirits which the story largely stem from Tommy Lee. Jones, who is known for not being the most talkative during interviews, is quite candid as he reflects on making the film with director Michael Apted, who also speaks to Loretta Lynn in a spate featurette. Lynn speaks of her difficulty in watching the film as it hits too close to home, but commends Apted for its accuracy and truthfulness. Capping off the extras is an unusual featurette of George Bush Sr. giving what sounds like a speech at the American Film Institute in 1989 about America's heart and soul send through film, singling out Coal Miner's Daughter, among others. Coal Miner's Daughter is a powerful story about the rise from adversity and the struggles along the way, relatable and inspiring to many in search of identity and self-worth. It's more about people, rather than the music, which echoes the sentiments of those who live and die without recognition right about now. The nation needs a good "O Kentucky" ballad to mark the October 4th passing of country music legend Loretta Lynn. The trailblazing Grammy winner died at 90 years of age on her estate in Hurricane Mills, a town she bought in 1966. Needless to say, the queen of country music came a long way since her impoverished beginnings in Appalachia as a teen. She married an ambitious 21-year-old Army vet who she knew for just a month before Loretta turned 30. She raised 4 children, wrote and recorded her first sing, "I'm a Honky-Ton Girl," and was performing on stage at the Grand Ole Opry in the years that followed. She would have 2 more children, release 50 studio albums and 86 singles, 51 of which became top 10 hits, 16 5 duets with Conway Twitty, and 11 solo songs held the #1 spotless chart. Toppers ones on the Way 1971 and Rated X 1972, among others, candidly conveyed the experiences of American women. The songs such as her first #1 hit, Don't Come Home, A Drinking with Love. In On Your Mind in 1966 offered frank depictions of domestic situations when people didn't discuss such things, while Tammy Wynette was singing Stand By Your Man. 1968, Lynn was standing up to her husband with Your Squaw is on the Warpath 1969 before her female empowerment hits. The Pill 1975 reached #1. It was considered too controversial to play on some radio stations, despite her music being periodically banned. Lynn is the only woman to be named American Country Music's Artist of the Decade, 1970s. She also became the first country music singer to grace the cover of Newsweek in 1973. By 1976, Lynn was the first country music star to reach #1 on the New York Times bestseller list with her autobiography, Coal Miner's Daughter. Kitten by George Vexey. The book was adapted into the 1980 movie of the same. And Apple TV traces Lind Ragster Rich's story from the 1940s through the 1970s. Like her music, which uses heartfelt humor and honesty to tell a story, the film relays its feisty heroine struggles. In a straightforward and sometimes funny way, Thomas Rickman's Pwy script doesn't sway from recounting the pitfalls of Lind's personal and professional life, nor does it paint her as a victim. Instead, British director Michael Apted lets audiences in on the creative process by showing the artist's ability to turn life's lemons into lyrical lemonade with her own brand of practical poetry. Lind spoke to generations of fans. As a result, the biopic was a success at the box office, and with critics, the film scored Oscar nominations for Best Picture, Adapted Screenplay, Art Direction, Cinematography, Editing, Sound, and a Best Actress win for Spacek. In the title role, Spacek, who did her own singing, also picked up a Best Actress win at the Golden Globe Awards, where Coal Miner's Daughter was named Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. In addition to the actress's transcendent portrayal, the film features excellent performances by Tommy Lee Jones as Dee, Little Lynn Beverly D'Angelo as Patty Klein, and Levon Helm and Phyllis Buens as Loretta's parents. The cast also includes cameo by Ernest Tubb and Minnie Pearl as themselves. Looking back, the movie may seem formulaic, but that's because its popularity helped define the biopic genre as it spawned the similarly 2004 and Walk the Line. 2005, Coal Miner's Daughter was selected by the Library of Congress for the National Film Registry. In 2019. Over the decades, Lind performed at the White House for 5 presidents and received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2013 during her long and groundbreaking career. The pioneering icon was dubbed the First Lady of Country Music, yet she will forever be a coal miner's daughter. This film, directed by Michael Apted, screenplay by Tom Rickman, produced by Bernard Schwartz, starring Spack Tommy Lee Jones. Beverly D'Angelo, Lon Helm, cinematography, Ralph Debott, edited by Arthur Schmidt, music by On Bradley, distributed by Universal Pictures. Release date March 7th, 1980, running time 24 minutes, country, United States. Language English, budget $15 million, equivalent to $46.6 million in 2023. Box office $67.4 million, equivalent to $29 million in 2023. So guys, this is the review of Coal Miner's Daughter movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.